Hey guys, welcome back to Ancient Amnesia Podcast. This is Josh, and I am back with a quick clip show. We are actually going to have a nice long chat with a friend, a new friend, and a colleague, and somebody who I've really learned a lot from. We set this show up a while back, and since then I've had to really do my homework and research to understand the scope and the breadth of the topic that we're going to cover tonight. His name is Stephen Sorensen. He is the owner, operator, founder, and content creator of Chronology Truth. You can find him on his Facebook page, Chronology Truth. You can also go to his website, which is chronologytruth.wordpress.com. And he's also a patron at Chronology Truth if you want to help him out. And, you know, I love what I do. And the reason why I love it is because I'm finding a lot of people along the way that are bringing so much information to me that I never even realized not just existed, but just the scope and the gravity of it. You would think that with something like this, I would have run into it a little bit easier, or I would have discovered it on my searching. But it just goes to show you that you really have to continue to search for knowledge, because just when you think you've got the big picture, just when you think you've figured it out, and you've got this very cozy, content idea of reality, the past, the future, the way the world works, you just you run into something that bursts the bubble. And for some people, that's scary. And for some people, that's uncomfortable. For some people, it's not desirable. For me, I'm kind of an adrenaline junkie. I like it. I like it when my worldview gets shattered. And one of the things that at Ancient Amnesia that is very foundational to our message and our movement is finding out where we lost our history and where in the midst of time things began, ended, restarted. We don't know. And I think that people think they know, but they really don't know. And so today we want to discuss a really fascinating topic. And in general, it's about chronology. And when I say chronology, I don't think people really understand what that word really means. I think they think of Rolexes and Timex watches. I don't think they understand that chronology is a science. It is a method of extracting the time frames of history. And I have a specialist, Stephen. Your work is amazing, man. I really kind of I was very impressed whenever I looked into some of the data that you're presenting and you're trying to get out there. What is chronology? How would you define chronology? And what is the importance of it in terms of studying it, and how does it affect our worldview today?
So thanks for having me on your show. Chronology it's a branch of applied mathematics. It uses dates and information about when people ruled, when a city was founded, when somebody was born, or when somebody died, to be able to give some sort of time frame as to when events in the past have happened. So for an example, everybody has a personal chronology with their life. You're born, you say your first words, you take your first steps, you go through the rings and whatnot. Each of those events are set up in a linear fashion that mathematically can be spaced apart from each other in a chronology. So historical chronology is an attempt to try and order the events of the past and when they happen.
Oh, awesome. And you're right. I mean, everything has a data point. And I guess the question is, like, can you put all these data points accurately? When we go into the past, we're talking about trusting other people in the past across the entire globe. We're going to their data points, and we have to then trust that what they put down is correct. Is that right? And how far back in time can we go with trusting that chronology, that time period? Whenever someone said at this date to this person, and it wasn't even them, it was just someone talking about a person, right? So it's not like a person telling them of their life. It's someone else talking about someone else and their life. And so when we talk about trust, how much can we trust their chronology of the past, in your opinion?
I am not sure we have to trust it. It's not something that's needed. But if we want to look into the historical realms to try and understand what has happened in our past, it is definitely beneficial to get familiar with the content that we're working with to build some of these stories. As far as I'm concerned, I'm still trying to find a expert in, I think it's code ecology. I'm not even really sure what area or study I'm supposed to be looking for an expert in, but somebody that is familiar with the history of the manuscripts that lead to the modern day translations and additions of these ancient stories. So potentially you could go out and buy a book on Hercules and you could read about his life and what he did, but that's based on some ancient manuscript. And some of these scripts are known, the names of them, but their histories are sketchy at that. And so I'm still trying to find some experts in the field to be able to talk to them more about it. But as far as I can tell, a lot of these things surfaced in the 15th, 16th centuries. The manuscripts we can finally pinpoint in history. Mm-hmm. And then even at that, some of them are as late as just in the 1900s and just in the last 2 decades, 2000s.
Right. Would you say that chronology is more of a mathematical approach at dissecting history, apart from the more cultural, archaeological, the traditional kind of way of dating things? This is more of a mathematical method. How would you describe chronology in that sense?
So the connection between history and chronology is in the fact that chronology provides a backbone for history. You could take Alexander the Great, who's one of the famous historical characters. You have a lot of information about his life, but you could have it out of order. Without that order, there's no real understanding of when these things happen. You could potentially have some interesting things like he was like a Benjamin Button type situation. He's getting younger as he grows older, if the chronology is the story. And so the chronology really provides a backbone to history, where these events are then filled out with historical information. So history, in a sense, is dependent on math, because chronology is dependent on math. And history without chronology is just, in my opinion, a jumble of facts, sort of chopped up and thrown in a hat to be picked out and lined up in whatever order.
Right. And so, and I think one of the things that we like to propose, and we talk about this all the time, is just how much convoluted history is. I mean, we have a lot of reasons why things get kind of convoluted. We have cataclysmic events that happen that completely destroy the planet and civilization, and we have to then pick up the pieces. There could be multiple civilizations that are completely wiped off we've never even heard about. There's also, in the kind of scientific field of trying to dig up things, we can't date a dinner plate, or we can't date the pyramid based on the dinner plate that was found next to it, because stone is something that you can't date. And so there's this kind of fallacy of ideas that people have that, it's because they found these artifacts next to this thing, that this thing has to be the age of the artifact. But we know that's not true. So most of the conservative and the stuff that you're taught in school and even all the professions that have to do with this stuff, they are just trusting in these methods more than they really have raw actual data as to how they can date these things properly, because it's really just kind of like, it has to be because they believe in a certain chronological order that they've either believed from the past or they're constructing themselves, but it has to fall in, right? And if something comes out different, they just say, well, that can't be. There's no way, because this is true and that says it's not. So let's just put that in the closet and not talk about it, not promote it. Do you feel like in archaeology, they are kind of intentionally trying to do this? So they're trying to actually create a certain idea of the past, or do you feel like this is just kind of a passive, unintentional belief, overtrust in the methods that science are using to date things? What do you feel like is happening there?
My personal opinion on that whole idea is that geology up until I think the 1870s was dominated by young Earth creation science, and everything that they had to understand had to fit into that scale.
Right.
Depending on whoever you picked. James Ussher had a very popular one that people used across a lot of different countries. So it got replaced by some of the ideas of the longer history for the Earth in the 1870s by new discoveries, and that eventually got really overturned by radiometric dating. And now it seems that radiometric dating is the fallback for just about anybody that wants to argue for a long chronology. They go directly to that, which it's got a lot of issues in and of itself, being based on such an incredibly limited amount of information to try and make claims on such a long scale of time.
Right.
And it's somewhat useless to this idea that we're talking about, we're leading up to, of this chronology, and the idea that maybe the timeline that we're working with here is shorter than what we've been told within the last 1,000 years or so. The radiocarbon dating, which is common for living materials like trees and animals, plant life and stuff, that is, they say, within I think the last 1,000 to 60,000 years they can date stuff. So even if we were trying to establish some sort of system, I'm not sure why they would even say that, because if what they're saying is true, you die and your carbon intake stops, then you'd be able to trace that right away. But I guess you have to wait 1,000 years before it actually starts to take into, kicks into action. So I'm still waiting to talk to people about that. That seems to be one of those things. It's a thought terminating cliche. People think, well, radiometric dating confirms it. That's the end of it.
Right. That's the idea, is to, and I have a problem with this within the science mind. I'm not science minded, but I don't trust it as much as people do. I think that they think that, wow, look at all this technology, they must be right about everything. And I don't think that's true. I think we all need to understand that theory makes up a large percentage of what these type of subjects believe, including like Big Bang stuff and the cosmic theory stuff. This is all theories. This is a lot of it's math. None of it's actually been shown to be, absolute 100% true. So you do have to kind of like, science is a process of proving itself wrong. It's continuously fixing things. We have to kind of look with an open mind at what they're discovering, what they're implying is being said, because throughout history, we thought the Earth was the center of the universe, right? And that's completely wrong. But for 1,000 years or however long, people believe this stuff. So we're in that same mind frame, and science is still making the same mistakes that it has to a large degree, and it wants to believe certain things, and people want to attach themselves to that. But a lot of this dating is not something that's just locked in 100% rigid, and it also goes into multiple different subjects. They're using different levels of science, different areas of science are coming in to do these things. If you want to date the pyramids, you got to bring geologists in, you got to bring climatologists in, you got to bring archaeologists in, and they're all going to disagree to a certain degree on what they're finding. So it's not just this black and white picture. And I think that's one thing we all have to kind of at least understand as we talk about these things. On the other end of it, I also want to get your thoughts on the idea of this ancient, we talk about the Alexandria Library getting burned, a lot of these libraries getting burned. We had in the past people that would conquer a people and or decide to rewrite a certain history. They would hire people to do so. They would write the documents. They would go in. They would burn all the rest of those documents, so that the only existing survivor was the new, updated, revised versions. Do you feel like that is something that's happened in the past? And how does that tie into this idea of chronology being, wrong or invaded to a certain degree?
The book burnings, that ties into, I don't know how familiar you are with the medieval studies, but the book burnings in medieval times tie right in with that of the new learning that they were trying to introduce. All of the heretical, anti-biblical scripts were being destroyed, and even some Bibles were being destroyed. Like Martin Luther's was starting to be condemned. The Mayan burnings in the South America of the
Codex
were worshiping I think almost everything but 7 codices that are got destroyed in those fires. So it was a deliberate destruction of our old information to be able to introduce this new information.